Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bound to Talk Football. I'm your host, Blake Walker. Alongside of me are the boys from the Bound House, aka our Bound social medias team. A couple of them, we're missing a couple, but we got Luke Fountain. Luke, raise your hand. White t-shirt, nice to see it. We got Ian Hurley in his college dorm room. Ian, raise your hand. We got Jack Kearns in his blacked out apartment. Which is currently avoiding the snow flurries outside. And then we got Paul Erich, fresh off a rice cake in his apartment or house. Guys, appreciate having you on here. Let's talk a little bit of football. We have the Dome coming up. This is recording this on Wednesday. This will be out Wednesday. So we got Dome football coming up. We're going to give our championship picks. Thanks to everyone who watched last week's episodes. They were kind of few and far between. I just quickly want to touch on, we did fantasy football last week. How y'all feeling about the fantasy football? Was it, how'd you like, because for me, I thought it was really engaging. The games are always engaging, but quick thoughts. What did y'all think of the fantasy football that we did?
It was fun to have a summary of how all the players play, because it really showcases all the players that play, because we make obviously those player of the game graphics, but there's plenty of guys that slip through the cracks of those, or even on a losing team that goes off and kind of gives recognition, and it keeps you way more engaged.
Yeah, I personally loved it. It was a lot of fun. I mean, obviously I won and everything, so that's why it was more fun, but it's definitely more engaging. You would when you draft a third string wide receiver, it almost makes you cheer for that third string wide receiver more than you cheer for the stud receiver that you just didn't get in the draft.
Yeah. Ian?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and I think it's mostly because there's so few teams playing that you go pretty deep into rosters with guys that you're picking. So, like Luke said, it almost makes it more fun that you're cheering on not the names that are maybe getting all the recognition in the world, or just the top guy from every single team. So
I can't remember, Paul, maybe you remember, do we have anyone crack 50? I think we maybe had one.
Yeah.
Crack 50.
Dylan Stecker cracked 50. I think Dallas Miller cracked 50.
One of my guys cracked 50.
Yeah. I know one of the guys on the early days.
The first day, yeah.
Might have been Gustavo Gomez. I cannot remember.
I don't think he cracked
50. Either way, it was a fun experience. We will totally try to push to the Bound coding team that we need fantasy football. Jack, I think you'd agree. We need fantasy football.
Yeah, it was pretty dang fun. The funnest part for me was to see the people who maybe didn't get picked and were chirping a little bit on social media and saying, next time I bet you pick me. That was the most fun for me. But yeah, that was whoever's idea that was. I really liked it.
Yeah, that was awesome. And then one more quick thing. I just want to go through what was y'all favorite moment of the semifinals. Paul posted that graphic. There were so many moments. I'm going to have to go with the Pella 99-yard touchdown. The game was teeter-tottering so much, and then Lewis Central has Pella back on the 1, and everyone's like, all right, here's when Lewis Central finally pick it up, and then Pella just throws a bomb. And it was so loud in there. It was so loud in there when that happened. So I'll go the Pella 99-yard touchdown. It was my favorite moment.
I'm going to go with the Class 3A semifinal games. You guys, I don't think were there for that. They were insane. Both games came down to the last possession, and they both had defensive turnovers to win it. Crowd was
awesome.
Loud. There was drama. It was sweet.
Yeah.
I am debating between two: the tip touchdown for Remsen, or the trick play for Liberty on 4th and 17.
That was wild.
That they ended up scoring on.
The 4th and 17 was insane. That was loud.
Yeah. I was just going to say the Liberty trick play, because we were all standing right behind the end zone that they ended up scoring on. And I just remember Paul tackling me to the ground right after they threw the last block that give them an open lane to the end zone. And everyone was just going nuts after that because teams have tried the trick plays where the whole line goes to the ground, but you still just never see it actually fully work like to the extent that it did for them. So,
Jack?
I'd say the entire Liberty Southeast Polk game. Yeah, the trick play was obviously awesome. To watch those teams go back and forth was pretty fun. There was obviously some controversy on some play calls, which I always think is fun. It's really interesting at the Dome where they play the replay and everybody in the Dome gets to react to what they see on the big screen. And yeah, I just had a bunch of people come up to me and say, "Why don't we have replay?" It's like, well, I don't really know if you can do that in high school football, but yeah, it's just a different environment because that doesn't happen week to week.
There were so many people this week or last week that I heard that same thing, not just during that game, but a lot of why don't we have replay or at least replay at the Dome where it is possible. Not saying we need replay for the whole state because it's not possible. It's literally impossible.
Right.
But definitely replay at the Dome. I feel like that's something that a lot of people want to see because you want to get stuff right at the Dome. So, yeah, a quick honorable mention I'll say is Jaden McGregory's 99-yard pick six. It wasn't a pick six, but 98-yard interception return changed the game in Dowling Valley, and that'll forever probably be a memory for those guys. All right, boys. Well, let's jump right into the picks for what we got. I can't do them one by one, so we're just going to kind of have to go in general. Valley takes on Southeast Polk at 7 o'clock on Friday. We'll go through each buddy's pick. I know it's not a good start when we're all picking for Valley, but
they're
go
taking
one
the
by
screenshots right now.
We'll go one by one here and explain why you picked them. So, Ian, you're going with Valley, as is all of us, but you're going with the Tigers. What made you come to that decision?
I ended up going with Valley because overall, when I look at what both offenses try to do, it's fairly similar in the grand scheme of things. Valley has a bit more of a rushing attack than Southeast Polk does, and that gives them more versatile offensive attack. But also, we saw it especially last week against Dowling, but we also saw it like in the previous playoff games where the big-time players on Valley's team come to play in the big-time games. And McGregory made huge plays last week, and obviously Zay Robinson had just one touchdown, but you expect those guys to make more big plays when they're playing for a title in the next game. And so I think the stars of Valley will make enough plays, and the ability to have a rushing attack when Southeast Polk's defense is questionable at times, to say the least, will help Valley end up winning this game.
Woody is going with Valley, not on with us today, but Jack is going with Valley. Luke, you're going with the Tigers. What do you got?
I originally picked Dowling to win it all, and then when I saw Valley win, I only picked Dowling because Valley was so beaten up. Like, they had some injuries. Zay wasn't 100%. We could clearly tell from the week before. But how they played and how explosive they were with those injuries, even with their best defensive player out, they looked insanely good, and people stepped up. And like Ian was saying, like, big-time players make big-time plays in big games, and they did that. And I think they're going to do it again this next week, especially, and they're only going to be healthier. So that's why I went with them. And it's weird to see a 4-loss team playing for a state title.
4-loss teams never won a state title. I saw IA Sports posted that earlier this week.
I think it's really weird that a 4-loss team made a state title.
It's happened before.
It happened in it Valley or not?
Yeah, Valley. People have made it before. No 4-loss team has ever won it all. Jack.
Yeah, I picked Valley again for the same reasons. I thought they showed good resiliency being down at half last week. I didn't think that Southeast Polk deserved to win the game that they won last week, and it's pretty simple that I thought Valley deserved to win the game with how they played, and so that's why I picked Valley.
Paul.
This game, I think it's interesting because it's a way different Southeast Polk team than we're used to seeing, and Valley honestly has been a little different. Valley's gonna lean on the run game with King Coleman. That's been their whole mantra these past couple of games. So it'll be interesting to see how Southeast Polk defense handles that. We know that Liberty was airing it out against them, so we didn't really get to see a preview of that. Darius Mason's a big name to watch. He just is subbing in for middle linebacker for Valley. That's a big spot. He's only going to have like 2 games of experience in there, so that'll be a big player to watch. But I went with Valley just because I think it's a close game until the fourth quarter, but I think Valley's talent pulls them away at the end.
I went with Valley because of the trenches, personally. I just think Valley is a little bit bigger up front, unlike recent years where Southeast Polk has been the bigger team up front. Valley probably, although it was a couple of years ago, thinks about the Southeast Polk game from a couple of years ago. I think back to week 1 between these two teams where it came down to a last final drive and how important Sam Zelenovich was in that game. They don't have Sam Zelenovich. Now, granted, Caden Hillis has stepped up big. Holden Hansen has stepped up big. I think it's in the ground. I think it's all in the ground attack for both these two teams. And I just like Valley a little bit better because of how big they are up front. But I would not be surprised in the slightest if Southeast Polk goes out and wins this. Coach Zelenovich, Brad Zelenovich, should be in the upper echelon of coaches in Class 5A. I think rightfully so. Should be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. But if Southeast Polk pulls this off and does it in this season and makes it 4 in a row, quickly shoots Brad Zelenovich all the way to the top and shoots that team to the top as one of the better champions we've ever seen, just based off what they lost and what they returned. So, we're all going with Valley. That's not a good sign. It's not a great sign at all. We'll be on a set barstool next week if this is wrong. But, we'll see what happens. Class 4A, North Polk will take on Pella. Oh, by the way, it was 67% fan vote for the Valley game. I took the average between the Instagram and the Twitter poll, so that's where the fan vote is coming from. North Polk taking on Pella. This is 7 o'clock on Thursday, not Friday. Ian, roll with it. What do you got?
So based on what I had seen so far in the playoffs, I wanted to go with a little bit different pick in 4A, and so I ended up picking North Scott, and they obviously looked good for one drive of the entire game, and North Polk completely shut them down the rest of the night. And the speed that they have on the defense, that North Scott literally could do nothing right on offense, it seemed, after that first drive. And the D-line was getting to the ball quicker. The secondary wasn't allowing anything at all. And really, Pella, they might have a whole different game last week if they don't get the goal line stand that they did. That might be a completely different game, and we might see a different matchup in this championship game. So based on what I saw last week, I liked what I saw out of North Polk a bit more than what I saw out of Pella, even though Deers obviously will give any defense that he's going against trouble. I still like North Polk to end up with a win in this game.
Whitmore's going with North Polk. Luke, you're going with the Comets.
I would also agree their defense is just elite. Like all game long, they look super consistent. There didn't seem to be many flaws in their offense or defense. I was just looking at the stats just now, and Feldman was 5 for 6 with 3 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. And when you're that consistent with a quarterback, I know he only threw 6 times, but he's a lot better than that. He can throw it 15 times and complete 13 pretty easily. But they just have an elite squad across the board. I do think Pella is also elite. They looked super consistent against Lewis Central and surprised me by how much they won by. But I think North Polk wins this because of their defense.
Jack?
They took the words out of my mouth. They just look polished. They look like a really solid football team, and that defense is really good. I'll be excited to see Pella's passing attack go against North Polk's defense, but I think Comets will come out with a win.
For me, for North Polk, I mean, at this point in the season, to be averaging 7.2 yards a carry is ridiculous. That's something we see out like the Southeast Polk teams or even those low-class teams that are really good at running the ball. And Feldman has been ridiculous this year, plays safety as well and forces turnovers there. A big thing for me for Pella is their rush defense is something to watch. That's obviously their leading receiver only has 248 receiving yards. And North Polk, that's what they're going to excel at. And Pella this year, and their losses at least, or close games, rushing ball has been their weakness. So we're going to have to see how that pans out this Thursday, but I'm going to go with the Comets.
I'm the only one going with Pella, and I'll stick with what I said beginning of the season to now. I think a lot of players rally behind Coach McKinstry. I think that's a big deal. I think that's an extra added motivation factor to try to end it out on top for Jay, Coach McKinstry. I think Colin Current I was very impressed with in the win over Lewis Central. The defense was much better than I thought. I thought Lewis Central was bigger. I did, and I think they were bigger. And Pella just flat out beat them straight up. Hard-hitting safeties. We saw that in the win. But Emmanuel Deers is a big difference maker in that game. They have a ton of speed on the edge. I like what North Polk's done all year, man. I do. I think what they've done with Nathan Feldman and BJ Tate was great. I like the Dutch. I like the Dutch a little bit more than I do the Comets. This is going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a great game. But give me the Pella Dutch, man. I think history helps them out here a little bit. I know they want to go out on top, so give me Pella in that one. Another not so good one if you're a Wahlert Catholic guy, but Humboldt will take on Wahlert Catholic. This is at 1:00 on Friday. Fan vote 61% goes to Humboldt. Ian, start us out. Why is Humboldt going to win the game?
Well, now I don't feel as good about Humboldt winning the game seeing this. But again, I think how their defense looked last week, just even though Wahlert Catholic obviously played it in a very defensive game as well, it was almost so turnover based in the Wahlert Catholic SBL game last week. It was very reliant on turnovers to get field position, and I just trust Humboldt's offense to be able to create more going at the full length of the field and not having to rely on turnovers. And I trust Humboldt to take care of the ball more than SBL did last week. And I think when you give Humboldt a chance, they won't give up that chance. They'll take advantage of it rather than there were some chances in last week's game that SBL obviously didn't end up taking advantage of. And so I'm going to go with Humboldt this week in the 3A title game.
Whitmore's going with Humboldt. Luke?
I don't feel confident either now because this is usually when we get our picks wrong. I really like Wahlert Catholic's defense. Their defense all year has just been insane. They don't give up points, but Humboldt's offense and their quarterback is just so explosive. And then obviously their coaching. If you have Dallas Clark, someone who's been around the game that much, who knows that much about football, who's been around such great minds like Peyton Manning, there is a coaching factor there too. And when you have a really, really athletic quarterback, some really athletic receivers, a pretty good defense, and a really, really good coaching staff, I think that's what made me pick Humboldt, because their coaching staff and their quarterback is very good.
Jack?
Yeah, I picked Humboldt as well because I have got to watch them a couple times on the stream, but obviously you don't get to watch a team as in depth because you're going back and forth between games. But I became a pretty big Cohen Matson fan. I love a lefty quarterback. I think the Mount Vernon game, that was the toughest draw that they could have had. I think Humboldt had some calls not go their way and still found a way to pull it out for the win. I would agree with everything that everybody else has said. Wahlert Catholic's defense is really good. So if Humboldt can move the ball, I think they'll be able to hold their own on their defensive side of the ball. But I think this is going to be a tight game. I'm surprised that we went 6 for 6 here.
Paul?
I went with Humboldt just because through this season they've played some ridiculous competition. They've played North Polk, who's in the state championship in the class above them. They beat Van Meter, who made the dome in the class below them, and then beat Algona for most of the game. They had Mansky, I'd say about a half. They beat Clear Lake twice. They beat Solon bad. Then they now beat Mount Vernon. It's a team that's they beat a bunch of teams that are very notable. Madsen kind of been around for a long time. It's kind of his year of destiny. Waller, I just don't think they can keep a pace of scoring. I think only Humboldt needs to score only about 24 points, I think, and they win. And that's going to be the reason I got to go with Humboldt.
I'm with you, Paul. I think this game is going to be really low scoring, generally speaking. I think last week, Waller Catholic went in and said, we can just focus on guarding or blocking the run because that's all they needed. SBL literally runs the ball. And then SBL got late, and they're like, oh, crap, we got to pass the ball. Now it's like you got to flip. Now the script flips. Humboldt passes the ball pretty well, and then, they run a little bit with Cohen Madsen. I think Cohen Madsen's the difference maker. Truly, I think the quarterback matchup between him and Drew Riley will be really interesting. I love Waller's defense, like just all of you guys. They have really put up numbers, but also I bring in what Paula said is that Humboldt has been through a gauntlet, man. I mean, arguably one of the better schedules in the state. They've played rushing teams. They've played passing teams. And I personally think they played a better Mount Vernon team than Mount Vernon was SBL. So I think I like Humboldt. I like rolling with the Wildcats there. Sick uniforms, by the way. Their uniform combo was so nice. I'll go with Humboldt to get the win over Waller Catholic. Again, if you're a Waller Catholic fan, this is the best thing you wanted to see is that all of us picked against the Golden Eagles. I think they have been picked against all year, and they still have not lost a game. So that tells you what you need to know about Waller Catholic. Class 2A will look like this. West Lyon will take on Spirit Lake. This, in the fan vote, is unbelievably close on both sides. 51% goes to West Lyon. So this is really a toss-up game, and I think you'll hear that in our explanations. Ian, you're going with Spirit Lake. You're the only one going with Spirit Lake. What do you think?
Obviously, West Lyon's going to give them something that they haven't seen yet this year. By far the best defense that they've gone against all year, and it's really not close. But just like in previous teams that we said, the stars were shining for Spirit Lake when they got to the big games, especially last week. And they're so quick to the ball on both sides of the ball. Their wide receivers were able to create great separation, and part of that's probably PCM's defense. And obviously they're going to see something much better this week against West Lyon. But obviously on defense too, on all levels of the defense, they were so quick to get to the ball. The D-line was getting to the quarterback without having to full-on blitz. And the secondary was giving up no separation to the wide receivers. And really, they only had to play, offensively 2.5 quarters of football. They let off the gas pretty early in that game. And from what I've seen, this is kind of just a gut feeling, but I think their stars' ability to show up in the big game, and I think they'll have enough creative offensive coaching to give some looks to West Lyon that they haven't seen before. The stars will be able to make enough big plays, and it's just a feeling that I think Spirit Lake's going to win this game.
Woody's going with West Lyon. Luke, you're going with the Wildcats.
I think their defense is elite. It took them about a quarter versus Van Meter. They started out a little slow, but it was all West Lyon the rest of the game. And they are physical and very, very big. Their physical size is huge. Standing on their sideline for that game, they are big boys and they want to win. And Spirit Lake does have athletes, but I think size wins in this game, and West Lyon is big and physical and very defensive minded, and to just shut down Van Meter like that, and Van Meter's a really, really good team, I think West Lyon wins this pretty easily.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Luke just said. Definitely a slow start. Van Meter getting up I don't know if it was 10-0 or 17-3, something like that in the beginning of the game there. But West Lyon has just really been dominant all season. Not really letting a lot of people put up many points. The most points they let up this year was Van Meter in the last game, and that was based on a couple of mistakes and whatnot. I pick West Lyon. We got some friends up in Spirit Lake, so I'm pulling for them personally. But I think West Lyon is too good. I think they'll be okay here in the 2A state championship.
For me, I pick West Lyon. I think this is a game of inches. It's a high-powered offense from Spirit Lake, meeting a high-powered defense. Big points for me here is West Lyon's secondary needs to have a big game. Van Meter, we saw some holes. Van Meter, only form of offense that they could have was bombs on the sideline, and it worked for that's worrisome when you have a guy like Caden Lunt and Dylan Stecker. Both these teams force a lot of turnovers. Spirit Lake forced 28 turnovers, and West Lyon forced, I think, 22 turnovers. So two good defenses that take the ball away from you, but I think it comes down to what quarterback just doesn't have as many turnovers. Can West Lyon get a game like Cherokee Washington for Spirit Lake where Lunt threw 2 interceptions? I think that's the difference right there. So I'm going to go with West Lyon.
I think in some ways it's a revenge game, and that may sound crazy, but last year these two teams played in the Class 2A quarterfinals, and Spirit Lake won 20-19, where this game was close the entire way, and then in the fourth quarter, both of them started to get their offenses rolling. Spirit Lake threw 3 interceptions in that game. West Lyon still lost. Bryson Childress did not play well. West Lyon just didn't play well, and Spirit Lake still played great and only won by 1 point. I think West Lyon been thinking about that for quite some time, and I think it helps them out. I love what Spirit Lake does offensively. I think they're one of the most fun teams in the state, but size matters, and I think West Lyon has just had a great year where they're like, we have to finish this. It just has to be done. I think West Lyon tries to keep this thing low scoring, and if it is, I give the Wildcats the advantage. So give me West Lyon to finish off a pretty good season, but I don't be surprised if Spirit Lake makes this interesting, and I think they will make it interesting, as in it'll be a great game. All right, Class 1A. I don't think this is really much of a surprise, but we're all going in Grundy Center. They are 79% of the favorite. That is the highest out of anyone that was voted. Ian, start us off. For good reason, Grundy Center is the heavy favorite.
Yeah, and I think this one's pretty self-explanatory too. What I saw at Dyke New Hartford last week just at times was pretty unimpressive. They showed that how one-dimensional they really are on offense, and even last week, Hinton was able to figure out what was going on at times, and really Dyke New Hartford's offense was really, really slow at times, whereas Grundy Center was able foot on the gas for 4 quarters of football last week and really took it to Wilton for the entire game. And they were able to show both a run and a pass offense. And Dyke New Hartford's defense, really, when Hinton started throwing the ball, the secondary didn't look that great for Dyke New Hartford, and they were giving up some big plays in the pass game. And I think Grundy Center rolls in this game, and if I can say it, I don't really think it's going to be that close either.
Woody's taking Grundy Center. Luke?
I agree with a lot of what Ian just said. The defense for Dyke, when Hinton started passing late in the fourth quarter, it literally just looks like they wanted them to just come back and make it a close game because they got 2 onside kicks, almost a third, and they could not stop the pass at all. And Grundy is completely comfortable with running, passing, and doing whatever they want. Their offense didn't look flustered at all last game. They basically did whatever they want at will, and it looked super, super easy for them, and I think they win pretty easily.
Yeah, I got nothing to add to that. I think they're dominant.
We saw this game week 1, and it was week 1. It's a 2-possession game, 21-7, and I really think we've seen through the year just Judd Jarosky be ridiculous. He has a 75% completion percentage. I don't think I've ever seen that from a high school quarterback have that high of a completion percentage. 25 touchdowns, passing add in 15 rushing. He's been ridiculous. I think he's the difference here. He's played basically perfect ball the entire season. I think he keeps it up. This is a Dyke New Hartford defense that has been good all year, and they held Grundy Center to 21, which is something to be excited about. But I think the talent on Grundy Center is just too much.
5 out of the last 6 times the two teams have played, both teams, the highest score we've seen was 21 points, and that was Grundy Center. Grundy Center has yet to give up more than 21 points when it's been a winning streak like this. They've won 38 straight. They've yet to give up more than 20 points. I think this is Grundy Center. I think Dyke New Hartford, I would love to see a little bit more out of Colin Meester. I felt like he was just a little slower last week. Like I felt like there was more that we could have seen from Colin, and I think that might be a big difference. But Tieran Vokes is on a different level. I mean, the kid literally did the splits. I thought for sure he had torn something in his hamstring, and he hops back up and he's laughing as he comes off to the sideline. The team is just built different. I mean, they get to the ball quick. Their defense is electric. Winning is contagious, man. And I think it just continues. I think Grundy Center wins their 3rd straight state title and just keeps on rolling. All right, Class A, TriCenter taking on West Hancock. West Hancock gets the favorite, 70%. Our staff disagrees based off what they've seen. Ian, you're going with the Trojans.
I am. And what we saw out of West Hancock for 2.5 quarters last week, we were watching the game and we're like, are they okay? Like, what's going on? They couldn't recover an onside kick, and really their defense was just flat out falling apart, and Madrid was starting to do whatever they wanted. Whereas TriCenter, we kind of expected it to be a much closer game than it was with St. Ansgar. And TriCenter's defense stood up and only gave up 14 points to what's been a pretty solid offense for Ansgar for most of the year. And I liked what they did on offense. They're very creative on offense in how they're getting their wide receivers open. And I liked what I saw out of those wide receivers in the ability to get open. And they were doing it on all sorts of routes. They're sending the slot guys on go routes that were getting open. And then there were also just easy short routes to the outside guys that were getting open. They would turn those into 12, 15 yards. And based on what we saw out of West Hancock's defense for almost more than half of the game last week, I think TriCenter is going to be able to take advantage of that, and I think they'll end up winning this game.
Woody's taking TriCenter. Luke?
I think the big name in this game is AJ Harder. He was not on my radar going into the last game. I thought it was all going to be Carter Kunze. He set the school record last week in rushing yards, over 2,000-yard rusher. And after the first quarter, I went up to Woody and asked, I was like, what? Like, is this quarterback a senior? Because he just looks like a veteran in the pocket. I don't know what it is. He looks so calm in there, and he just sits in there, finds an open guy, can move in the pocket good. And I was shocked to find out he was a sophomore. He plays like a seasoned vet, and they really like to pass. They're a very fun offense, explosive offense. And if he's playing at his highest like he did last week and Carter Kunze can run the ball, I think they have an elite offense that will not be stopped.
I think this is going to be a really good game. I understand everything that people are saying about TriCenter. They did look good last week against a really good St. Ansgar team. West Hancock obviously had kind of some second half blues last game after going up big in the first half, and they kind of just let it slip a little bit. They did score in the second half, but obviously not to the same level. Not the same level as Madrid did. I think they scored 28 points in the second half. I loved the idea that they didn't throw the ball one time. We saw Brady Bixel playing on one leg, it seemed like, with some torn stuff in his knee. I think that they're a super tough team. I like this one to be close, hopefully, and I think that West Hancock's going to pull it off.
For me, I'm seeing a West Hancock team that last against Madrid. Honestly, from a couple Preston Wicker mistakes in the first half, there are a couple interceptions there that I know AJ Harder isn't throwing, and the big difference for me. And I think he's smarter with the ball in the playoffs. Obviously, he has 14 interceptions, so there's a chance there of some ball hawking going on for West Hancock. But I really think this balanced offense gets it done. West Hancock, I think they're one bad start away. 1-2 touchdowns straight for TriCenter, and the game keeps going, and you're down. What are you going to be able to do with that without being able to pass the ball? At some point, that's going to have to add up. So I'm going to go with TriCenter to get it done.
I see two teams that come from different backgrounds. I see a West Hancock team that has known state championships and knows how to win on the big stage versus a team who has never been here before. And TriCenter has won their first playoff game this year, won their first semifinal game, and now make their first championship appearance. And they're young, man. They're still young. I think they still have a lot of room to grow. I think experience helps West Hancock out here. And I'm not saying that and here's how I see this going. I think West Hancock wins this year and TriCenter comes back and wins it next year because now you have a year under your belt. You know what to have happen. AJ Harder's still just a sophomore, and he still had, 14 picks coming into the state tournament. So, I mean, it's not like those were down numbers or anything. Will West Hancock pass the ball? I think they're going to have to just a little bit here, but it's the constant running. I think TriCenter really shut down Riverside. I think of Jackson Gordon, who just struggled. They couldn't do anything on the ground. They were hanging with ACGC, who was running the ball well, and then eventually a big penalty kind of derailed that whole game. I think it's just the constant pressure up front by West Hancock that they're just going to keep running the ball. I think that's what maybe hurts TriCenter. And defensively, I think West Hancock is going to struggle in this game. But I think it's just going to be a repeat of Madrid. I truly do. I think it's just going to be a couple turnovers will be the difference. West Hancock doesn't turn the ball over, man. I think they've only fumbled twice this year, something like that is what I've heard somebody talk about up in the booth. So give me the Eagles to roll on, but I think this is the end of West Hancock in terms of titles. They'll win this year, but I think TriCenter will be back undoubtedly and should be a heavy favorite next season when it comes to the Dome. So, yeah, we got one more, boys. 8-player. Here we go. Remsen St. Mary's taking on Gladbrook Rhinebeck. Remsen St. Mary's is the favorite at 62%. We got a couple going for Gladbrook. We'll start out. Ian, go for it.
This game almost feels like a toss-up, to be honest. And what we saw out of both teams last week, especially, was fairly similar to one another. And I would say Remsen was a little bit more impressive on the defensive side of the ball than what we saw at Gladbrook Rhinebeck last week. But I think just the more explosive team will end up winning the game in the 8-man game. And I think what we've seen out of Gladbrook Rhinebeck, they are the more explosive team, and they showed more creativity on the offensive end than I saw at Remsen St. Mary's. And really what we saw last week, it almost felt like the game was getting really repetitive with Bishop Garrigan. And it was turning into a defensive battle because both teams were kind of doing the exact same thing back and forth. And it wasn't breaking through for either team until obviously the miracle touchdown at the end of the game for Remsen. And I think what Gladbrook Rhinebeck wants to do is a little bit more consistent. And I think they'll end up with the win in this game.
Woody's going with Remsen. Luke?
I have to agree with Ian. I think it's the more explosive offense, and that's Gladbrook Rhinebeck. Remsen, if you think, doesn't even win that game probably if it's not for two Bishop Garrigan guys tipping the ball up. It was a third down, I think. Was it third or second down?
It was third down.
It was third down with a minute and 30 seconds left, and they were still about 30 yards out. And I'm not sure if they have a kicker or anything, but I don't even think they win that game if two Bishop Garrigan guys tip it up in the air. And GR's quarterback, Eilers is elite. He's a dog. He wants to run through your mouth, and he will have a lot of rushing touchdowns in this game, I think. So that's why I'm taking him. I think they're elite.
Run through your mouth. All right. Jack.
I would agree with what Ian said. I like this game as a toss-up or one of the closest matchups that we see at the Dome. I think it's going to be a really balanced game. I liked what I saw from Remsen St. Mary's, even though that they, like we said, kind of won at the last second, only won by 2 against a good Bishop Garrigan team. I love Landon Walsh-Schmidt Waldschmidt and the dual threat quarterback presence that he presents for the Remsen St. Mary's team. I like this one as a close one. I like their defense too. Gladbrook Rhinebeck is a really, really solid team. But I picked St. Mary's schools, Remsen St. Mary's.
I'm going with Remsen St. Mary's, and that's because they beat the Big Bad Wolf in 8-man at the time, Bishop Garrigan. They won 23 straight. That championship run by them was almost looked like it was setting up for a dynasty from Bishop Garrigan, just because of how much bigger they are. They are a roster of 40 in 8-man, and we're talking about Remsen St. Mary's who's a roster of 21, and that's just such a massive difference. And that win, I think we can't overstate how impressive that was for Remsen St. Mary's, even if it was kind of a Hail Mary win. And that's why I'm going to go with them against Gladbrook Rhinebeck here. I think they get it done. Linn and Waldschmidt's been great this year, and I think they keep it up.
I think defense versus defense, if you're putting them head-to-head, I'll take Remsen's defense over Gladbrook Rhinebeck's defense any day of the week. Gladbrook Rhinebeck has faced very good teams, I'll give them that, but the defense has been something that's given up 30-some points back and forth here. Couple turnovers late or a couple mistakes late by Lennox kind of get them or give Gladbrook Rhinebeck, not give them the win, but I was very impressed by Drew Eilers. I think he'll be a big difference maker in this game. But Remsen, man, they're just tough. 21 players. As long as one doesn't get hurt, I think they're going to be okay here. I just like Remsen's defense just a little bit more. I'm with you with Waldschmidt. I think he's just a tough runner. They're just going to keep it going. I mean, they're not one that's going to have a ton of big plays by any means, but they sure are going to, run it and get you tired. I think Remsen comes out on top here in the defensive game. I think Remsen takes it overall and continues winning ways here in the last couple of years. So, all right, gentlemen. Well, that is all we got. Appreciate everyone for coming on once again. The Dome starts tomorrow. Again, we record this here on Wednesday morning. Everything starts tomorrow, bright and early at 9:30 a.m. For 8-player, it has to start that early because they have to take down all the 8-player stuff and get it ready for the 1A or the Class A game. Yeah, y'all have fun for all those headed down. Paul will be doing updates. We'll be having photos and stuff, video clips and stuff. Will be no fantasy this week just because of the games and whatnot, and we're not really all together, so it'll just be you can play fantasy on your own. I know, it's not that hard.
Tag us. Tag us in your lineup.
Yeah, go ahead. Send us your lineup if you're playing fantasy with others. So, all right, boys. Appreciate you hopping on. That'll do it for us here on Bound to Talk Football. I think Paul and I will be back next week to recap all that we saw. Matt, thank you so much for watching Bound to Talk Football. Enjoy your football championships. We'll see you next week.